Welcome back to Disquiet Time. Anne and Kelly here. All right. Today we are going to be talking about seal women. I've been looking into it a little bit, collecting some information. Pretty interesting.
So specifically, these are the seal women of the Faroe Islands. Are they different from other seal women
Ah,
stories
good
significantly?
question. I have information on that. We will talk about that, kind of what they're
Okay.
related to. So there's some very interesting things to pick out of it. Um, we will not be doing an update on Flatwoods yet, but be looking for that in the future. So, Anne did get a copy of the book. We'll eventually
It's a
be
pretty big
updating
book.
you. It's gonna take a minute.
Yep.
So, and we are still planning our trip to West Virginia. So to do the triangle of Mothman, Flatwoods, and Bat Boy.
Yes.
So we will definitely have to blog that one.
Yes. Definitely.
And hopefully some of the Appalachian Trail, so maybe we can get something spooky. Okay,
That's a
seal
lot of
women.
driving.
It's a whole lot of driving. We're gonna have to get a nice car. Just pay extra, get a nice car.
Yeah.
So, okay, seal women. I started with the story you told me at the Danish island, the Faroe Islands, that there is a tale of. Now I found several pronunciations for this, so I'm just going with the one that's easiest for me to say. So, but the Kopakanan is what it's called,
Okay.
and she
Okay.
is a seal woman. And the idea in the Faroe Islands, and the ideas across all these different spaces are very similar. And now the whys and the hows and how often this can happen varies, and we'll talk about that. But in general, seals are humans who have died at sea, usually, or been called to the sea in some way. And then one time a year, usually the 13th day, according to this story, of the year, they can come ashore and shed their seal skin and become human.
So just
Now,
for the day. So the
just for
13th of January.
yes, you would think that would be really
So
cold in the Faroe
yesterday.
Islands.
Yesterday the
Oh,
population of some
yesterday.
towns must have like doubled.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I wasn't
Okay.
even thinking of
Nobody
that.
notices that these people only show up one day a year?
Oh no, they totally know about them. These are everyone
Okay.
knows about them. They totally know about them.
Okay.
Um, and in this story, this was on. Let's see, was it on the island of? Sorry, let me make sure I have not gotten it wrong. Kelsoy, the town of Mikladalur. Sure, I'm massacring
Mhm.
that.
I
Um,
have no idea.
a man, the way in this story, this happens in so many of the stories, a man decides to go check this out. He's heard about these people, the seal people coming out on the shores and becoming human for the day. So he sneaks over and he watches them. And one of the women leaves her skin close to where he's hiding. So he steals it. When he comes back later, he finds a young woman. She's stuck there. Now she can't find her skin. She can't transform back to a seal, go back into the sea. So, according to this story anyway, she now has to go back with him and live at his house. She has to live with him until she gets her skin back because he took it.
Okay. Okay, so that is similar to other stories. Okay.
Yes, very similar, but lots of similarities there. So he's stolen her skin, he's locked it up, he's hidden it, and she lives with him for several years. They have a family, they run a farm, and at some point in each of these stories, it always happens somehow she gets a hold of her skin again. And even though she loves her children, she loves her family, she immediately puts on the skin and goes back to sea. And in
Right.
many stories, she also already has a husband or a betrothed of some kind in the seal form. So she
Gotcha.
returns to him. Um, and most of the stories seem to kind of end there, with little pieces of, well, once a year they come back and the kids can see a seal watching them or something like that. But this one goes a little bit further, is that the men, um, apparently in these islands, in the Faroe Islands, they very rarely hunt seals because it is considered bad luck. But at
Mm,
this point,
right.
there's a whole bunch of seals somewhere close by, and the men are all getting together to go hunt them. And she visits her ex-husband in a dream and says, "Do not kill this particular bull seal or the two pups that are with him, because those are mine. Don't kill them." And tells
Okay.
the patterns and stuff. And he does. He goes and they kill him, and he doesn't listen to
Right.
her. So in this story, and this is very unique to these stories because you don't get this in the others. Then when he then takes the head and the flippers and is cooking them, and they're being served for a meal, she appears and curses the whole town, the whole
Okay.
village, and that the sea is going to kill as many men as it would take to link hands around the entire island.
Hmm.
So
That's
even
very
today,
specific.
yes. But even today, if somebody drowns or is killed at sea or something, it's like, oh, we still haven't, enough haven't been gathered yet to meet that requirement.
Eek. Eek.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's unique to this story, that coming back and
Yeah.
cursing them. So, in a couple of
Well, I
other
mean, it was
stories I
certainly
found,
deserved.
her family does get killed by humans, but there's this part was very different. So that is the
Gotcha.
story of Kopakanan. Um,
Okay.
Now, obviously, these sound very, very much like Selkies, which are very common in,
Right.
both in Norse mythologies. Um,
Right.
you know, very prominently in these stories, if you steal one of their skins when they've come ashore and shed their skin, if you steal
Right.
it and hide it, then they have to stay with you. And it's almost always
Until they find it.
right. In all these stories, it's almost always women who are getting their seal skin stolen. Right. So there are, and we'll talk about, there are male versions of the story, but it's not. It's different. The power balance is very different in them. Um, Now, something else that I found, and of course, this might have already popped to mind for you, that these Selkies, of course, stories have a whole lot in common with mermaids and the stories of Finfolk. And this kind of got a little bit murky. I found different.
Well, yeah, the idea that they are people who died while at sea for work or whatever.
Right. Right. And then and some of the stories, some of the folklorists or historians that I was finding, very clearly said that this is like basically a subset of mer people. And others very
Oh,
clearly said,
okay.
no, these are separate. These are different.
Well, mer people are fish, more akin to fish, not
Right.
mammals like seals.
Well, I think the
I
idea
would
of
say they're separate.
mer being sea people, that, that I personally feel like they are a subset of mer people. There's just different types within these stories. But
Okay.
I'm not, I don't know enough about individually any of these cultures to be sure how they feel about it, which is ultimately where it would come from. But me personally, I kind of feel like they're a subset. Like mer person is like a big category, and then you have the smaller, you have the fish, you have the seals, you have these other peoples. So, but
Okay.
that's my opinion. Uh, but we'll talk a little bit more about mermaids and finfolk in just a second.
Okay.
So, and finfolk is basically just another regional name for mermaids, mermen. Uh, Now, and these mermaid stories and stuff also have very similar elements of the Kopakanan story. And it's usually women getting, the skin stolen and having to stay, and then they will immediately leave their entire family if they
Right.
find
If
that
they ever
skin.
find the skin. Yep.
Yeah.
And well,
Um,
there's also usually the element of that, that it doesn't end well for the person who kept the skin.
yes, yeah. Well, I mean, they at the very least they end up heartbroken that they've lost
Right.
their spouse. Now, but if it's a male Selkie or Finn Man or whatever, it's a little bit of a different story. And it's not so much telling stories of these men getting the skin stolen and being trapped. It's more they're active hunters. They are looking for women in particular to take
Ah,
back down with them. And that, women who are unhappy in their marriages or unmarried or just unhappy in general and don't want to be there anymore, they're looking for them. And there's even the idea that you can summon a male Selkie on purpose by dropping 7 tears into the sea.
okay.
So you
I
could
know seven's
purposely
usually
summon one.
significant in lots of different.
Yes. Yeah, we have 7 and 13 crop up in a couple of places here, and I'll try to point them out. But 7 tears, and that's a positive. Seven's usually a positive thing. So that's to attract either a fin man to be your husband on land, or you get taken back to sea.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, hope you want
But,
to live
yeah,
in the water.
but what a very well. There's let's see if I can find it really quickly. There's a couple different places. One is underwater, and they have a hidden island. But when I get to that in my notes, we'll talk about it. So
Good.
there's a place for humans to live. And what's interesting is that these children, these mixed children, and I thought this was really interesting, and I want to find more, and I couldn't find more. Um, the children who are thought to be, half Selkie, half human, have webbed fingers, webbed hands. Sometimes they say webbed feet as well. And one source, I only found it in one source, said that their skin is slightly green and can have cracks in it that smell fishy. I only
Ew.
found one source of that, but I found
Ew.
several about the
That
webbed.
will not make a child popular at school.
No, well, I guess you have to be right up on it, but still, yeah. So, but that the webbing came up a lot. I found that in multiple places, and I found the tale of Ursula a couple of times, and Ursula is not her real name, though she was supposedly a real woman who had
Okay.
a thin husband, and her children had webbed fingers and it was like apparently this kind of horny material, a stiff material, and it had to be trimmed away periodically so that they could, move their fingers. And a gentleman named Walter Trail Dennison is a folklorist. He's a Scottish folklorist. And he
Okay.
says he is descended from the family of the real Ursula, and that there are people in his family tree who have a condition where there's like a webbing between their fingers that gets hard and has to be trimmed away. But
Ew.
I couldn't find anything on a condition that would do that.
Yeah, what actually causes that?
I mean, according to him, it's a real genetic condition. I mean, of course, it's not really because you're descended from seals, but
Right. I mean,
like,
I
oh,
think that a 23andMe would probably
get
clear
real
that one up.
boggled by that.
Right.
Yeah, but apparently he said there is this skin condition in his family, and that he claims to be descended from this Ursula.
Oh, so possibly there is some kind of weird genetic mutation in the family.
Right. So I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. I thought that was cool. And I wanted to find more on that, but I couldn't. I thought that was really cool. All right. Now, the question of when can these seals become human? There was a lot of variation. You know, the first one, the first story, it was on the 13th day of the year. So one time a year they can become human. Others were when tides and other conditions are right, then they can. So it's just variable depending on the
Okay.
situation. Others only in the spring. And again, this was another seven. It was the seventh stream or something like that, and somehow that correlates to springtime. So another seven, and then another seven every 7 years that they can come ashore and turn human. And that was pretty common in the stories where the Selkie has left, that would be then every 7 years she could come back and see her children for her.
Okay.
That was pretty common ending to that one. And this seems to be based off of more the idea is that these is more strongly tied to that they were human and they've somehow sinned or done something wrong, so their punishment is that they can only come back every 7.
Okay. But
Yeah, that was
my
really
main question though is why? Why do they even want to shed their skin and walk on land?
well, because a lot of these stories they were originally human. That seals, I guess all
Yeah, but
seals had
if they
something
get their
human.
skin back and immediately go back to the sea, that means that they didn't really want to.
Not permanently. I guess there's appeal to temporarily be on land, but when you're trapped, because most of
Maybe.
the stories, the appeal is like there's another family in the sea for her already.
Right. It's just interesting. It's like at this point you think, ah, screw it, I'm not going back there.
Right. I guess they like it. So, oop, did I
I
lose you?
guess.
Oh, no, there you are.
No, right here.
Yeah. So I don't know. And there's great variation in how often they can do this. Now I didn't find
Okay.
much about motivation why they would want to come ashore, but usually they're described when they come to shore as like dancing and singing and having a party basically on the beach. So maybe it's just like, hey, cool beach day. It's fun.
Maybe. I mean, because it just seems like if they have that option, it's like I don't want to live in the sea. I'm just going to get rid of the seal skin and go back and be a person. I mean, it seems like they could.
Yeah. I did not see any stories where anyone voluntarily did not
Stay
put their skin back on.
permanently.
Yeah, that was never voluntary
That's, yeah, that's interesting.
in that
Okay.
sense. Now, for the
There must
Selkies,
be some
for the
advantage to living
mermen,
in the sea.
there must be. But now there are 2 different places for them. I'll find that in a minute. But now the mermen, those stories, sometimes they did come ashore voluntarily and marry and stay. But they're not shedding skins. It's a little different. But these
Okay.
stories between male and female, the power differentials are very, very different. So, and now in some of these stories, talking about that power difference, I think this would be a good place. The Selkies are actually, or the Mer people, depending on the story, are actually trying to lure humans out to sea to either drown them, which I guess then they would become seals, or
Right.
for them to become basically slaves. That they have to go back. They do all the cooking and cleaning and housework, and they're the
Gotcha.
ones doing all the work. So
Just
they're
to be
they're
like, I'm just going to go eat fish in the water. Thank you.
right.
Raw
So
fish is better than this. That says
so
something.
that does. So, so some of them Selkies are more predatory. They're actually actively looking for humans, not just getting trapped.
Seals are predators, to be fair.
That's true. They really are.
They look cute, but they are predators.
Yep. You don't want to mess with them.
I don't think I would
So,
trust a seal.
oh, and something else I found, of course, these stories are very, very old. At a minimum medieval times they were being recorded. So these are very, very old folklore. Had a lot of beliefs about this for a long time. Um, now, back to that, being predators and actually looking for humans, that's really more when they're called finfolk. That's kind of more their thing. And that
Okay.
they come to shore and they're actually looking for, again, these human captives. And what's interesting about finfolk is that they're not seals ever, though closely related, coming from the sea, obviously. But they like have boats, like they'll have fleets of boats and they'll use those to lure people out. But they live underwater in a place called Finfolkeen, which is literally Finfolk home. And then
Well, I was
they
about to
have
say, yeah.
there's an island, a hidden island called Hildeland Island, which means hidden land. That is thought to be either invisible or surrounded by a magical fog, so nobody sees it and runs into it. And that's where the human people would have to go and build their
Okay.
land.
Well, here's a question. How does one tell the difference between a mer person and a finfolk? Since one's
Uh,
going to try to kill you.
well, that's where things got so murky. It seemed like, I want to say it was Scottish were more the Finn folk, and Iceland were more the merfolk. Like it was like by area. Like I wasn't
Okay, so
finding.
so you're not going to run into both. You're in an area, you know if they're the kind that's going to kill you or not.
I can't say definitively yes, but I think because there's stories of the Selkies also sometimes being dangerous, you can just assume if it comes from the sea, there's a potential for it to be dangerous.
I see. I see.
That's where I would go with that. Kind of like you
I
hear
mean,
something whistle in the woods,
personally,
probably
I
not
would.
good.
I would assume if it is changing
Yeah,
shapes and it's coming from the sea, it's not your friend.
right.
But I was just wondering if
This
there's a way to
could
tell
have
it's
been.
the type that's actively looking to kill you or they might accidentally kill you.
Ah, got you. I don't know. That's a very good question. I didn't see anything about
Or
that.
just maybe regional. If you're in Iceland, you can probably talk to it. It may not shank you and drag you into the ocean. But if you're in
Right.
Scotland, just go the other direction.
Yes. Yes. See,
Gotcha.
and most of it was kind of over in these areas. There was less in the Nordic areas that I found, but they do exist there. These ideas exist there.
Okay.
So now we can come back also um, to this idea of the 7 years, because here's a question we haven't asked yet. Why would these Finn folk or merfolk or Selkies want to marry humans? Why are they looking for humans?
Exactly. Why would
And
they?
again, this is a power thing. This doesn't affect the men. But if a Finn wife marries a Finn man, she will lose her beauty every 7 years until she becomes a Finn hag. But if she marries a
Okay.
human, she doesn't lose her beauty. She doesn't Finn hag. So, it's just
Okay.
the women are affected by this. They become ugly.
Well, that's going to affect the men too, because then no mer woman is going to want anything to do with them.
Right. Well, then they have to marry human women.
But they're not going to suffer if they were to marry. Oh well, I
No.
guess they would then be mad that their wife was ugly, but that
Right.
sounds like a man
I
thing.
guess that's suffering enough. Yeah. I mean, come on. So, but again, 7 years, increments of 7 years.
That's
So,
interesting.
and then we had the 13th day. So 7 to 13th kind of crop up in this quite a bit. Now, I was just saying that I couldn't find a whole lot for the Nordic, but I did find one Norwegian story, which seems to
Okay.
me to be related. It doesn't say it's related, but it feels like it's related to me. And it's called the Noken, N-O with the slash through it, K-K-E-N.
Okay.
Noken.
Okay.
But they live in fresh water, not salt water.
Oh.
But they will appear as just eyes poking above the water. But they try to lure women in particular into these ponds and lakes and drown them. Or they'll take the shape of a white horse, so another animal shape. They come ashore,
Right.
take the shape of a white horse, and then let children get on their back and ride them, and then they jump back into
Oh,
the lake and drown them.
yes, yes. There's a whole thing. Yeah.
So, and I was
And
like,
that's
I think
also, I
that's
believe there are
related.
also some from like the British Isles, some stories about those kind of horses that will then drown you. That you
Yeah, there
can't get off
is.
its back.
What are they
That if you get
called?
on it,
They've
you
got
can't get off, and
fish-tailed
so then
horse
it
body.
drags you.
Yeah. So, and that was this one. I just felt like that one was related. I didn't find it independently. I found it accidentally looking for something else. And I was like, I feel like
Yeah.
that's related to those very, very much.
There,
So
yes, I have heard that one before. I mean, I guess it's kind of related. I mean, but they are also actively, um, they're active predators. They're not just out here. They're not like former people. They're
no, they're their
definitely
own thing.
predators of some kind.
Yep, yep. They're trying to drown people. I don't know if they eat them or, but they'll get you drowned. So,
Yeah.
which raises a question that I'd been thinking about even before I found it, which was kind of strange to me. I was thinking about it. So much of Appalachian, Ozark, etc. folklore comes from these Nordic and Celtic areas.
Right.
We don't really, I couldn't think of any, maybe I'm wrong, water based monsters like that. And I thought, well, maybe it's because we're freshwater.
Well,
We're so far
you
from
do
the sea.
have water-based monsters, but they're
But
almost always like swamp monsters.
right, right. They're more land-based, just swampy, uninhabited areas. They're not based like this, like Merfolk, Selkies,
We're not
Noken.
a seafaring nation the same way these were. It was like almost
Right,
the entire economy relied on that.
right. And that's what I was thinking is because we're freshwater, not saltwater, and it's not that big, massive, important part. But then here's this
Right.
Noken, but maybe they also have the sea, so maybe
Yeah.
that's why. But I couldn't think of any like the Kappa. Was it Kappa? What are they called?
You talking about the
Eh,
turtles with the water in their head?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The Japanese, we don't have anything like that, and that's fresh water as well as salt water. I just I could think of several things, but I couldn't think of any in our area that
No, if it's going to be water-based, it's going to be a swamp.
yeah.
It's going to be a
So I
swamp
thought and
monster.
we have lots of rivers, lakes, big bodies of water, but I guess they're just not as important to the economy. The sea.
I mean, it's not the whole livelihood. I'm sure there's probably. I mean, well, but we think where you have the most like swamp monsters, swamp creature type stories, places like southern Louisiana where the swamps cover everything,
Everything.
and
Yeah.
then along like the Mississippi River and stuff, you're probably going to find a lot more.
Right. Well, and those areas tend to be more uninhabited, so
And
they
they're
become
also the
spookier.
water part of where they are 100% more important. They are the entire livelihood for the most part. If
And
everybody
maybe
in your
that's what
family
it
is going to spend time on a ship at some time, what happens to somebody spending time on a ship if they die becomes very important, right?
yeah, no, I agree. That makes sense.
So,
It's
what
just
happens if you drown at sea? You become this.
right. This is what
You have
happens
to
to
have
you.
an
How the
answer for
story
it,
went out.
right?
And that could be it. I just found it interesting since so much of our folklore is translated to this environment, but somehow that got stripped out. Like, and maybe it
Yep.
is the economic importance of it. It just
And
got
the
lost.
sea became less important to us, so
Yeah,
those
just
monsters
dropping
didn't
up. Of course, I mean, when you
didn't
live in the
yeah.
Appalachians, you got more than enough things to worry about.
Right. Well, and you're definitely not going to drown in the sea if you're living in the oceans.
Right. So,
You are not going. You are well above sea level. There is not much terror the sea can hold for you that far up.
it hasn't been under the sea in a long
Yeah,
time.
there are no humans present that remember when it was under the sea.
No, there's no
It cannot
dinosaurs
even
that
be
remember the
generational.
sea.
There were
Yeah.
no humans when it was under the sea.
No, no. I think it came up pre-dinosaurs.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there something about it being older than bones?
Yeah.
That when the Appalachians pushed up out of the sea, that nothing with
Uh-huh.
bones even existed yet.
Right.
So it's
So,
like, yeah, I
crazy.
can see that. You can't even have generational stories or memories of it. It didn't, just
Yeah.
wasn't.
So, I guess the Appalachian Mountains stripped that out of Ozark folklore,
I mean, yeah, because why would
which is
none of it would
interesting.
translate anymore? None of it would make any sense.
Mhm. Yep. So I just found that interesting. I didn't
Yeah,
see
yeah.
anything on that. I didn't find anything on it. I just started thinking, well, what's our equivalent? And we don't have one.
No,
We don't we don't have any
I don't
kind
think
of
we do.
monster equivalent like that. So
Yeah, I don't think we
cryptid
do. You're
equivalent.
right.
So I thought that was interesting. And I just had one last then bit of information that I thought was interesting. Now I said that these stories at least go back to medieval times that we know of. That's when they were getting written down. And by then, most of these Celtic and Nordic areas had been Christianized. And one of the
Yeah.
prominent features of these stories is both their love for coins and silver, particularly silver coins and silver jewelry, and their
Oh,
dislike for Christian iconography.
Okay.
So if you're in mer people waters, you can put with chalk or tar on the bottom of your boat a cross, and it's supposed to keep them away.
I see.
Which tells me these stories are much older than medieval, that the
Yeah.
Christian element is trying to drive them out.
Right. Right. Trying
So it
to
tells me these
overwrite
are
them.
very, very, very old cryptids.
Yeah. There's definitely a yeah. If they had things like that, that's definitely.
Right. Those
But that's
elements to
interesting.
me
Only
feel
silver jewelry.
that they're particularly like silver jewelry, and silver coins, but
Yeah,
they
it's a
like any
shame.
coin. Yeah, I mean, I love silver. It's my favorite. I don't like gold on me all that well, but so maybe I'm a
Yep.
Selkie.
Yep.
I'm
Yeah.
not webbed, so
Exactly. I'm not webbed, but I like water.
I love water. I love seals. I
I'm
love
sort of
silver.
shaped like a seal.
I'm very much shaped like a seal.
Yep. Yep.
So-
And I definitely love silver jewelry over gold.
and we have family that came from the British and Irish Isles.
Yep.
So
I mean, I
my
understand. I'm just saying that and they like to drown people that apparently annoy them in some way.
and there it has its
I'm not
appeal.
seeing the downside here. I'm definitely saying I understand you, Selkies.
Yep, yep. So and they winter in the underwater one. So I guess it's warmer under there, and they
I would think that.
summer
Well, water is
in the
definitely
island
it
one.
stays more of a constant temperature.
So they don't
It
freeze in
doesn't
the winter.
shift as much as the
So
land does. So I can see where they would be like, yeah, it's a little more consistent here.
right. So I mean, they thought it all
I
out.
like it.
I think these are really, really, really old, in my opinion. Really, really old.
These stories are certainly older than
Right. It just
um,
feels like these other pieces have been added in as it got Christianized. As
right. The yeah, you
here's
can
how you do
protect yourself by putting a cross on your boat. Like, oh,
right.
that's so.
But I think the older it's probably the older one with you throw coins away from you, and if they're trying to catch you, and that buys you
Right,
some
they'll
time
shoot
because
the
they'll go
coins
for
and
the
want it.
coins. Yeah, they'll go for the coins, and then you have some time to get away. That feels older to me.
Yeah.
And the iconography, I'm like, nah, that's Christian. But silver
Yeah,
in particular,
that's once again trying to take over the story. It's trying to take the
right?
narrative.
The idea of silver, it might have been another coin, or it might have just been any coin. It could have been anything before, because the idea of silver and selling out for silver is
Right.
very
That's
Christian. So the silver part
or
might
does silver
be
have some kind
newer.
of meaning in these areas before
Now that I
that
don't
we're not
know.
aware of?
I don't know what coins or money were made out of. I want to say they were made of bronze or something beforehand. I wonder if I can Google that really.
Yeah, because maybe yeah, I don't know.
Let's see if I can.
Because maybe silver was a lot more rare, and that made it more valuable.
Well, that's true. The earliest currency in Ireland. Ooh. There is no oops. There's no evidence that the Irish used coins before the Normans arrived in 1169. But
Oh,
Roman
okay,
coins have been found in Ireland in pre-Christian religious sites and trading places. So,
okay.
okay. So there's a Roman influence. So that's interesting. So maybe, yeah, then silver would have taken on a rather prominent. Uh,
Right, and it would be a novelty to a sea creature for sure.
yeah. So the earliest things that they traded that I'm finding look like they weren't coins. They were little rings. They were gold and gold plated, basically. Greek and
Hmm.
Roman. Um, let's see. I can't tell what they're made out of, but it looks coppery, bronzy in the picture.
Hmm.
It's definitely not silver. And oh, there's some coins turned up in an Irish hoard that were from Baghdad. Huh.
Oh,
And from 773 AD. Interesting.
huh.
So I would say coins specifically, silver coins specifically, sound Christian to me, post Christian. But the
Uh-huh.
possibility of throwing metal, shiny things, valuable things is the older.
Right. To distract them. That
Mhm.
sounds
That's how you
like it was
defended
falling apart.
yourself pre-Christian time. Yeah.
Give it a
Yeah.
shiny. Well, that makes sense too, because you would do that with like
A lot
vampires
of
and stuff
things.
too.
You give them
Shinies
shiny.
attract it, and
Distraction is a huge part of dealing with many cryptids.
yeah,
Ignore or distract.
yeah, yeah. I guess cryptids have ADHD. Give it a new shiny, and you can get away.
Huh. Okay, another point for being part Selkie.
Yeah, like, just give it a new shiny. It will forget you exist. It's cool.
Yep. Oh,
I mean, right? I
right.
mean, it would work on me.
It would totally work on me. And like, oh, you're not nearly as interesting as that.
It's like, ooh, what is that?
Yep.
It is a little shiny squirrel.
So anyway, that's everything I found.
Okay,
So
so
that was
yes,
interesting.
probably related to other um,
See,
seal and mer people myths. They're probably all vaguely related in some way.
right? The male and female stories tend to be so very different.
Yeah,
In how who has the power in those relationships, which I thought was interesting. And then the idea of where what's post-Christian and what's pre-Christian. There's a whole lot of it, like the sevens and stuff like that are probably very much Christian influence.
right, right.
That's my
Since the
guess.
numerology is,
So they've changed over time, but I personally think these are very, very, very old.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that they're much older
Mhm.
than the most the the tellings that we hear more now.
Right, the ones that I was able to find. I could find elements that I felt must be older than that.
Yeah,
So
that makes
that
sense.
we definitely can find the medieval stuff. I just went in looking for one story. I thought I'd retell the story and it would be kind of okay, that's cool. Here's a new cryptid that we don't talk about much. And it kind of
Right.
became a bunny trail that I
That there's
went down.
a lot more
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I followed that bunny quite a ways.
And then it's interesting though. I mean, I guess it makes sense, and I just hadn't really thought about it. That of course there would be what happens to you if you die at sea. If literally everybody in your family is going to at some point in their life spend time at sea.
Right.
That I
Right.
mean, they do have to have an answer for
Right.
what
But
happens
it
if you
makes me
die out
want to
there.
look at other areas like the Mediterranean or even the east coast of the United States because that's where most of our immigrants came to begin with. Or even if I
Right.
could find, I doubt I could find any native stories, but when they were that close to the sea before we pushed them out, surely they had
Right. They had something.
something. I mean, I know they weren't seafaring in the sense of European, but they were not landlocked either.
No, no. I mean, everybody gets stuff out of the ocean at some point or another.
Right. So
But
I'm curious. I want to find more stories, in these different areas and see if we're finding kind of similar themes with okay, these certain animals used to be humans, that's what happens when you drown, or, you know, what elements kind of coincide with this and what's different.
right,
So I kind of want to eventually dig into that some more, maybe find some
figure
other,
out what the difference is, and
yeah, what some other areas, how they deal with that. Because we can't dig into our own area since
right.
we're landlocked and bereft of these water cryptids.
Excuse me. Hmm.
Oh, bless you.
Oh no, all this dry air.
Bless you. I know.
Yep.
Negative temperatures make for very dry air.
Yep. Oh, and it is definitely sticking out there now. If anybody
Oh, is
wondered.
it? I don't have a
Oh yeah, my
window.
neighbor's roofs are very white. I'm
Oh
not
my
looking at. I can't
gosh.
see the ground from where I'm sitting, but the roofs
Look.
are white. You can hardly see the houses across the street because they now blend into the very white sky.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
yay!
Yeah. 14th of January. Big, big, big snow.
don't know if it's ever supposed to amount to much of anything total, but it's
I
cold.
hope so. It's so cold out there. I was telling C-Rad earlier when I came in from something outside, I was like, "I don't know if it's even gonna snow. The air is literally so dry.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to have some kind of moisture come in," but apparently we did because it's snowing. Yay.
Yeah. It's annoying.
I'll go
Oh well.
peek outside in a minute.
I'll go put an electric blanket on my lap and it'll be all good.
Yep, I'll let the weasel free so he can come get warm with me, and I'll work on getting this
Yep.
posted.
Okay. How does he like his new bed?
He liked it until the dogs peed on it.
Oh, that lasted less than a day.
Mhm. It's being washed right now, so we'll see.
Oh, dogs. Sounds
Anyway,
all right.
that's just what everyone wanted to hear. Oh, my dog's
Yeah,
peed on the parrot bed.
you know,
So
it happens.
it does.
Okay,
All right.
awesome.
So, all right, we will let y'all go. And what are we doing next time? Have we decided?
I think we've decided.
All right. So it'll be a surprise to even us.
Yes, it will.
All right. Later.
Later.
One recording stop.